You are in the Temple of the Rants, where I rant about whatever my $15 a month plus patrons want me to rant about. You can get one of these by being one of those. This one is for Rusty Shackelford, who says, "Rant about anime barely showing any ethnicities with dark skin. It's weird for me to ask this question when one of the leads of Carol and Tuesday is black, but anime tends to shy away from dark-skinned people." Alright, let me tell you. I honestly believe there are probably more dark-skinned or black characters in anime than white people. Like, when I think about it, I feel like I see black characters more often than I see white characters. And I understand that people look at anime characters and they see them as, like, light-skinned, and, like, they look like Japanese people. Like, if you really look at Japanese people, look at anime characters, look at white people, the best way you can do this is to look at cosplay. Just look at Japanese cosplayers who look like the characters that they're cosplaying, and then look at white cosplayers who don't, who just look like that character but with a white person's face, and you can really see how Japanese anime characters look. But yes, they do favor extremely light skin, as compared to the typical Japanese person. And I mean, obviously, this is just what they think looks best in animation. Like, I think it's just easier to read on a screen, like a lighter skin tone. And they probably just favor fairer skin in Japan, in women. I mean, if you look at hentai, it's hilarious because the girls are always way lighter skinned than the guys, who are presented as more like typical Japanese men. And you'll see a lot of darker skinned characters who are, meant to be darker skinned Japanese people. But I also think that, like, people from around the world will often mistake that for trying to look like a black character, or like, a dark skinned character who's not Japanese, just because, like, we don't really think of the Japanese as having like a huge spectrum of skin tones, but they totally do. If you want to see a great video tackling this subject in depth, Nino's video about why anime characters don't look white is really good. But yeah, like, it's like, I don't think that, like, well, first of all, another reason I could say that anime characters don't look white that Nino didn't cover is that when you actually see white characters in anime, they're very distinctive. Like, they always give them blonde hair, blue eyes, and, like, if it's a guy, like a square jaw, and, like, make them look very European. You never see a white character in anime that you would mistake for a Japanese person. But yeah, there's also plenty of black characters. And when people say, like, why aren't there more? Why aren't there more black characters in anime? I always have to say, because they're from Japan. Like, of course. How is that not obvious? You think the average Japanese person has ever seen a black guy? Like, there's not a ton of black or white people in Japan. It's an extremely homogenous culture where almost everybody looks exactly the fucking same. Like, and I don't mean that facial structurally. I mean, they all have black hair. They all have, like, it's like all Japanese people. When I say exactly the same, I mean as compared to America, where I can step outside and literally everywhere I look will be someone of a different ethnicity, where I live anyway. In Virginia Beach, it's like, I was at a JID concert the other night, and no two people looked anything alike at this show. Every different race, every different, well, except for the three guys who all had the same tattoos, the Rose Boys. Those guys looked, they didn't even look that similar. They just had the same tattoos. But, in Japan, the culture, they just don't see people from other countries that often. And so, like, it would not be indicative of their experience, of their human experience, to depict a bunch of characters who, don't represent people who they see in their daily lives. This is something that comes up a lot, like this weird idea of representation that, like, for instance, like, when people were talking about how the Oscars were too white, like, there's not enough black representation in the Oscars, but it's like, black people make up, like, what, 15% of the American population, And it's like the amount of representation they have in film is fairly proportional to the amount of them that is in the country. Whereas if you go to another country, like say India, that has a huge film industry, you're almost exclusively going to see Indian people in their movies. If you go to Japan, you will see Japanese people. If you watch Japanese anime, you see Japanese people. It's almost like people draw from their real life experiences when they create art. So yeah, I think that's pretty much the reason.